We wanted to keep all the news that we talked about pertaining to Star Wars. So we were just going to look at a few here. But one of the things that I've been noticing really since the movie started the production was all the, quote, problems they've been having with it, having to let go of directors, hire new directors. But the Solo movie, there's a lot of people that seem to be worried about how bad it's going to be. And I've heard people say that I'm not even looking forward to it, or people say I'm just not even going to go watch it. And I understand there could be a lot of things going on in the production process, and maybe there are some things that could be better, but I'm at least looking forward to the movie. I'm excited to see it.
That's kind of the way that I am with it, especially the things that we've already seen. I don't feel like I could be that disappointed with it. You consider the cast, you consider the source material that they're using as well. I think it should be fine. Now, it may not be the best Star Wars movie, but so long as it's serviceable and it gives us a decent history, because that's something that we didn't really have before, is much of a history for Han Solo before, and how did he and Chewie hook up? We have that, and hopefully that's something that we're going to get here.
Well, and I've heard people say as well, like they would rather see Calrissian Star Wars story. I want to see a Lando movie.
Absolutely,
that would be a good movie too.
Hopefully, we'll get something like that, especially if his character takes off in this film.
But and I had my reservations about the actor Alden Ehrenreich, I guess it is. I had my reservations about him, but seeing a couple of clips from the movie, it's not exactly like Harrison Ford, but it was never going to be. And so I just have to let that be. Just understand this is who's playing the character now, and just think of it more as Han Solo instead of not being Harrison Ford. And that'll help me enjoy the movie. That in itself.
That's the tough thing. Is a lot of times it's hard to separate the character from the actor, and especially in something as iconic as Star Wars, and when you consider how iconic that character is.
And the great thing is Chewie is still Chewie.
I feel like that they could make Chewie nearly immortal, and because he could. It doesn't matter. You just need a tall, skinny guy to play him. And that would be okay.
And it's not like you have to go back and search through his old dialogue from the original movies.
Yeah,
it's pretty much the same thing.
I wonder if Chewie and Groot are like cousins.
Maybe now that they both work for Disney.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
they're at least in the same realm. So, but no, I'm looking forward to Solo. That kind of leads us into the next news story, that Solo, a Star Wars story. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk a little bit about Rogue One, too, in just a little bit. But we said when Disney first started, okay, you had Episode 7, then you had Rogue One coming, and then Episode 8's coming, and then they've got Solo, and then they've been bantering about maybe an Obi-Wan movie, and there's this rumor and that rumor, maybe a Yoda movie, and then you have some people that say, look, maybe this is too much Star Wars. Because we're used to, all right, we had the trilogy in the late 70s, early 80s. And then, what was it, 20 years later, we got
I believe
the prequel trilogy.
Was it 99?
I think that was the first one, Episode 1. So, yeah, it was 77 was A New Hope. And then, of course, they went all the way into the early 80s with that trilogy.
Right.
And then not until 99 did we get another Star Wars movie.
Well, at that point, it was every 3 years when they came out with a new film.
Right.
And then I want to say, well, even with the second,
the prequel trilogies was every other year.
I want to say it was every 3 years as well.
Well, yeah, I should look that up, but I know 99 was Episode 1, and then the next one was 2002 was Episode 2, so it was probably 3 years.
Well, too, and that's something that you got to keep in mind, is that it makes more sense for Anakin to have turned it into a teenager over a 3-year period as opposed to a 2-year period.
But everybody's been saying maybe that's too much. Maybe you don't need this year is a main trilogy movie, and then the off year is a Star Wars story, and then the very next year is the next episode in the main trilogy, and then the next year is another Star Wars story. Right. And you're going to have a Star Wars movie in May, and then one in December, and they're going to do a TV show, a live action TV show, and they already have some pretty amazing cartoons, and the Clone Wars and Rebels are both good.
Right.
And they're going to keep those going. At what point does it become too much? Well, Mark Hamill obviously thinks, has been quoted saying that he thinks maybe Disney and Lucasfilm need to slow it down a little bit. I'll let you read his quote there.
Yeah, he says, I will say they should pace themselves because you don't want to oversaturate it. And that's kind of something that we have said too. He says, I said to Disney, really? 5 months after we come out, comes Solo, can't you at least wait until Christmas? But they've got things booked. They're doing Marvel and their own movies, so that's beyond my purview. Yeah. So, I mean, he makes a very, very strong point there, is that not very long after The Last Jedi, you have Solo. But then, Disney's going to try not to eat itself when it comes to chasing Star Wars with Marvel films. And, you're going to have Solo come out, and then not very long after that, you're going to have Infinity War.
Yeah.
So that's he makes a very, very good point. I'm not sure what's coming out this fall. We'll have to look at the release dates for some of those things.
Even though they're both Disney, I feel like Star Wars and then the Marvel movies don't necessarily have to worry as much about stepping on each other. But the thing we're getting into now is obviously Disney wants to make their purchase worth it for Star Wars.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar purchase. They want to get their money's worth out of it. But they have to be careful because we already have the main sequel trilogy. We have this Solo would be the second Star Wars story, which is kind of the off-year movie. We're already talking about Rian Johnson doing his own separate trilogy that's not really in the main storyline, but he's going to do his own trilogy maybe.
Do you feel like he kind of shot himself in the foot, though, with the fans with this film?
Well, I know...
Is it something we should talk about in a minute?
I know that what he was trying to do, and we will talk about that more in a minute, I feel like what he was trying to do was go off in his own direction before he started his own trilogy. Like all the things that he did that were risk-taking and things that stirred up the Star Wars mythos, he could have done those things in his own trilogy and not quote the Skywalker saga,
Right.
And I understand what they're doing. We'll talk more about that in a minute too. But I understand they're trying to get away from the Skywalker saga and have all new characters. But he got way off base with a lot of things. And like I said, we'll mention that again. But
right.
But I see that as part of the oversaturation when we're talking about he's going to do his own trilogy. They're talking about other people and other directors, and it's fine to have all these various directors working on Star Wars things, but they need to have somebody kind of keeping an eye on the thing as a whole to make sure nobody's getting too far off in left field.
Right.
And that's one of the things I feel like they kind of let slip a little bit with The Last Jedi. But talking about The Last Jedi, now they're saying, Solo's got to make some money because The Last Jedi didn't do what we thought it was going to do. The Last Jedi didn't make as much as we thought, so now they're kind of banking on Solo. And that's tough because you have people saying, I don't even want to see Solo. You have people just all out boycotting it because of The Last Jedi. Now, I'm not going to do that.
No, not at all. I'm
still going to watch all the movies. And like I said, as far as The Last Jedi, it's good enough. It just has a few things I wish were different. But
Right.
But Hamill has a point there by saying, look, maybe back off a little bit. Don't oversaturate it.
Right. Well, too, you kind of think of Hamill's perspective. For 30 years, he was the hero of the Jedi, and now he's not. So maybe he's just thinking, okay, for 20 years at least, you only had those three, and those were very strong. And then you had the prequel trilogy come out, and most people thought that they were not as strong as the original trilogy. So even then, he still looks like he's the guy. And then here you have something you have Disney's machine.
Yeah.
And Star Wars is more than what it was 30 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess the times which we live in now, everything is kind of treated the same way, and that it's the same thing happening with the Marvel movies. Like, okay, they're a success, so we need to make 3 a year,
Right.
And so they're going to do it as much as they can, make as much money as they can until that opportunity goes away. And I think that's what Disney is trying to do. They're just trying to get as much out of it as they possibly can, and as soon as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they see the part of the appeal to Star Wars is that it's kind of a rarity. It's not everywhere you look. Like for years, it was just that original trilogy. You'd see it on TV sometimes, and then when they re-released it in the theaters in '97, they started with A New Hope in '97, running them back through the theaters. They were a big hit again because it's not something you see all the time. And now you see Star Wars everywhere you look.
Right.
And every channel you're on, and every theater you go to, there's something Star Wars going on.
Yeah, every coffee shop has a Star Wars mug.
Yeah, now all of a sudden
12.
Everybody's interested in geek stuff. What's up with that?
Man, it's kind of like you said not long ago. Isn't it a great time to be alive?
It is. You're talking about these, the sequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Get off of episode 8 for a little bit. We'll go back to that in a minute.
Okay.
We know episode 9 is coming. The last bit of news that we had lined up was this rumor that Meryl Streep is going to play Leia in episode 9 since Carrie Fisher is no longer with us. I have my thoughts about how they could have handled that much better. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Right.
But the news headline is that Meryl Streep is rumored to replace Carrie Fisher as Leia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how that's going to be a good thing.
I'm going to tell you my honest opinion. I hates it. I don't like the rumor. For some reason, there's actually even there's a petition going around to have her play Leia, and I just don't like it. I'm just not a fan of that. First of all, I'm not a fan of Meryl Streep. I don't like her. I feel like she's just kind of she's overrated. Now, I'm not saying she's not talented. She's a better actress than I am an actor, but
she's a better actress than you are too.
Yes, she is. Yeah, absolutely. That goes without saying, but I just don't like her. I don't know what it is.
Well, and honestly, I mean, let's be real. It really doesn't matter who they got to step into that role.
Right. Yeah.
It's not going to be Carrie Fisher. Now, that Meryl Streep seems like out of nowhere. Like, who would even think of that? Because she's not normally thought of as a role like that. But anybody they put in Carrie Fisher's place is not going to be good enough for Star Wars fans.
Not at all.
And even if they went the CGI route, that's not going to be good enough. They need to find a way to gracefully write her out of the story early on in episode 9, I think, because they missed the perfect opportunity to deal with what happened in real life in the post-production of The Last Jedi. But, yeah, like I said, I mean, Meryl Streep, there's plenty of better actresses for that particular role, but I really don't think any of them would be good enough when you think about Carrie Fisher. And she is literally Princess Leia. Kind of the same thing with Harrison Ford and Han Solo. You're going to have to try and separate your thoughts from Harrison Ford and just think of it as a character. So I guess you'd have to do the same thing if they have somebody replace her.
You could do that, but I just hate Meryl Streep. I hate
You're going to
it.
boycott episode 9?
I'm not, but I may close my eyes during that part, though. Who do you think, let's assume for giggles, who do you think would fit that role?
Well, nobody's going to fit it perfectly. If nothing else, let Carrie Fisher's daughter do it.
I thought that would be okay.
She doesn't look a lot like her, but at least like you'd be keeping it in the family. It'd be like the next princess stepping up.
Well, they could do. They could do it with CG, I guess, and then have her kind of make my motion capture.
Well, and a lot of people were talking about the CG job in Rogue One, and as far as I'm concerned, the Carrie Fisher CG in Rogue One looked a little off. It looked a little video gamey, but the Peter Cushing, he looked pretty good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And a part of it was maybe a darker. It wasn't quite in the light as much. But the guy that did that, the actor and the people that CGI'd Cushing's face on it, I mean, he looked all right. It wasn't. Maybe it's because he looks kind of creepy anyway, and it's not as much out of place.
Right.
But the Carrie Fisher, the Princess Leia CGI in Rogue One wasn't as good as the.
I mean, it wasn't bad, but
Peter
it wasn't
Cushing.
great. I don't know if I had to pick somebody. If I had to pick somebody to fill that spot, I don't know. Linda Carter, maybe.
Ooh, good choice.
I mean,
Yeah,
she's got the geek cred. She's got. I mean, she was famous at about the same time that Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
I mean, Wonder Woman 1977. It fits. But that's if I had to fill that spot, and
I will say, just thinking about it right now, like if you were going to replace Carrie Fisher with someone else, you should have done that with Episode 7, because as many years had passed, now you have an older General Leia.
Right.
It would have been fine to have a completely different actress, and people would have wanted Carrie Fisher if she's available. But if they were going to go with a change, then starting in Episode 7. That would have been the better way to go. Of course,
right.
They didn't anticipate Fisher not making it through the whole trilogy. I understand that. So they're in a predicament. But we'll talk about it again when we get to The Last Jedi. But there was a perfect out provided for them in that script. They could have dealt with it perfectly. And for whatever reason, Rian Johnson just ignored that.